Good evening. Welcome to Beaches Watch, our April 1st meeting. This is not an April Fool's meeting, it's for real, but happy April Fools. Hopefully you didn't have any major jokes played on you today. My name is Maria Mark, I'm the president of Beaches Watch, and I'm trying to... Our guest is... That's okay. Okay, so we're excited to have our superintendent from the Duval County Public Schools, Dr. Christopher Berner, and our representative for our school district, April Carney, here. So they will be presenting in just a few minutes. I just have a couple of announcements to make. So we are videoing our meeting tonight, as we do all of our meetings. It will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow on Beaches Watch 2012, as well as a link on our website, beacheswatch.com. Is this too loud? Can you guys hear? Okay, so we are a membership organization, as you know. Our memberships are annual from January through December. It's $15 for individual, $20 for family, and $5 for students. So you can renew your membership tonight or go online. Our lady at the front will be happy to take your money and any donations that you'd like to make as well. So thank you. We'll go ahead and recognize our elected officials. So we have Candace Kelly, who is City Commissioner of Atlantic Beach. We have Sandy Golding, who is the Jacksonville Beach City Council. We have Lacey Mahan, who is a representative for Keon Michaels. There's April Carney, our school board representative. I think Corey Byland came in, Mayor of Neptune Beach. Okay, did I miss anybody coming in? Because I took the sheet a little early. Okay, great. So just some upcoming meeting announcements. City of Atlantic Beach on Monday the 13th of April will consider the agreement to provide the water line to Neptune Beach for their fire protection for the Kmart property redevelopment. So those, looks like this is kind of rearing its head again. So for those who are interested, please attend the meeting on April 13th. Last month we had our State of the St. Johns River report. So Lisa Reineman, our river keeper, presented, and you can watch that video on our channel, Beaches Watch 2012, if you happen to have missed it. This is getting a report card on the health of our river and our tributaries. So it was a very informative meeting, and it gives you points and ways that you can help with the health of the river itself too. Let's see, we have our Florida League of Cities, our 2026 legislative session review will be coming, it's the webinar. So they will be presenting the webinar on their website. Do we have a date yet on that?
No, it's already
there. Oh, it's already on there. Okay, yeah, so it's already on there. So they will give you like recaps and summaries of what happened during the legislative session. Our next meeting coming up May 6th, we will have our representative from the City of Jacksonville City Council, Lori Diamond. It was to be a town hall, so please come to say hello to Rory. It's been a while since he's been out here, and I know he's looking forward to seeing all the constituents here at the beaches. So, just by a show of hands, we'd just like to know how you heard about our meeting tonight. The digital beaches leader. Our Facebook page, our newsletter. Yay, okay. The Jacksonville Today email, online email, they always announce our meetings as well too. And that's really a great email because they have just snippets, gives you a very brief summary of what's going on around the surrounding counties as well as Duval. Our website, Beaches Watch website, and just through talking to your friends, neighbors, grocery store. Yay, okay. All right, we will move on now to our 2026 State of our Schools. Again, our speakers are Dr. Christopher Berner from our superintendent, as well as April Carney. So we will begin with April. Would you like to introduce or kick off? Kick it off? All right.
Good evening, everybody. I hope some of you are coming in from the shuttle launch and down at the beach tonight, so I know that's an exciting time to watch. I just want to say thank you all for coming. This is an event that I look forward to every year. It's great to be able to be inside of District 2 and let you all know what we're doing down at 1701 Prudential Drive for your families. So we've got a great presentation put together for you all tonight to give you some updates. I know there's going to be a great question and answer portion afterwards, so I welcome your questions as we go through the presentation. I'm sure there'll be some things that you'd like to talk about afterwards. Sorry, while they're getting this up, I will go ahead and introduce our fabulous Superintendent, Dr. April Carney.
Thank you. I've been worried about staying in front of the camera, so I'm going to move back behind the podium at some point because one of the things that the school district was going to find a way to donate to this organization is a clicker. I'd love to drive my own PowerPoint presentation because it gives pacing, but getting me behind the podium actually may help me with better pacing because it's not quite death by PowerPoint, but is a lot of information because you asked for a lot of information tonight. I know we introduced all our elected officials and it's great to see all of you. It's great. There's really amazing work that goes on out here. But I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege and ask my principals and teachers that may be present to please stand up and be recognized. So if you want to know where the magic happens, it happens with them and the teachers in our classrooms every single day. And that's where the great credit needs to go. There's one other small group I'd like to take the point of personal privilege to introduce, and that's the people that I remind every day that pressure is a privilege. In some way, shape, or form, I remind them every day. That we have a very small cabinet group in comparison to other large urban districts. And members of my cabinet and members of their staff as well are here tonight. And what I mean by pressure is a privilege, we have about 11 people sitting when we sit around the cabinet table, including the superintendent. That means that really 11 people, along with the help and support of the principals and the staff and the other people who provide us input, have to make decisions for 100,000 children every day. That's a lot of pressure, but it's a privilege to be at that table. And I want them to balance that with that pressure that they're feeling, that they are one of the lucky few who get to make that work happen each and every day. So members of cabinet, chief staff, other people, just please stand up and be recognized. So quick update, there's going to be an overview, some school updates, operational updates, budget updates, enrollment, retention, student safety. These were the big topics that you set ahead. I'm going to move pretty quickly. We did provide in the back some really cool photos of the potential wing that's coming forward for Fletcher High School. And if you look at the high school, I don't know the name of the road, if you stand in the road facing the front of the school and the flagpole, CD, and you look to the left, where the tennis courts and pool, other things are. That's where there is space to put in this two-story addition to the school to alleviate the overcrowding, remove portables. One of the reasons for the delay has been that originally a former operations chief thought they could put the building actually on the right-hand side between where the parking lot is and what I refer to gloriously as the little ditch. I know the big ditch I came across on the bridge on the way over. But the little ditch is that flood control area right in front of the high school. There's an easement there. We can't build a building there, right? We can't move the electrical power. So we had to go to the other side of the school. Wanted you to see that. There were also 3 handouts. One specifically about the master's facilities project and the major maintenance projects going on. If you didn't pick these up, you don't have to get up now to do it, but I want you to have that. The other piece is about escalator clause, as well as some data that will be very hard to read on the screen, but you'll have your own handout related to it, and that's about the particular aspect of Board District 2 school grades. And lastly, some information regarding our millage and how that's improving teacher salaries. So I wanted you to have those information because during the course of the presentation, some of those issues will come up. That's us. And I had more hair, and I was lighter. So school updates real quickly. So let's start with the district and the district we have moved to 99% of our schools being A, B, and C rated. It's a really incredible performance last year by amazing principals, teachers, speech language pathologists, other people who all do the hard work of helping our children through PM1, PM2, and PM3. Those are the progress monitoring tests that our state provides. PM3 is coming up. That's the high stakes test. So we'll get another feel for how well we're doing. We're predicting some numbers right now. I'll share as much as I can without alerting one of your beach fellow citizens. Corey keeps me pretty tied down on early data because early data always has a standard error in it. So we always want to make sure we're careful with that. But this is a hard piece to this year's school grade, the second bullet. Our graduation rate rose from 94% to 97.6% amongst our traditional schools. I believe that all parents deserve choice, but I will tell you this, and we never put it in the presentation, but if you add the charters in, that graduation rate actually drops. So not only are we doing a great job with our kids out on the beaches and across the entire district, we are outpacing some of our competition. 76% of our graduates met the college and career measures, compared to 68% of the state. And all student demographic subgroups had over a 90% graduation rate. Every single one of our high schools is over 90% now. And yet, not just 90% of the kids who you would think would graduate. We're also closing the achievement gap. ELL students, ESL, students who speak another language, students with an exceptionality, so I was getting ready to use a bunch of acronyms. Our African American, our Hispanic population, all of those are also climbing at the same time, and the gap between us, our white students, and our other students is narrowing. So not only are we doing better for all students, we're doing better in all of our subcategories as well. So a lot to celebrate about last year, and a lot of pressure to perform at that same level coming into this year. That's a historic look at graduation rate over time and a chance to highlight Fletcher. Thanks to the Fletcher principal for being here. I tried to give his building away earlier today. We were just teasing with our middle school principal, saying, like, wouldn't it be great if you could just move into the new wing? And he said he was going to tell his principal when he got here that he was going to move in. I said, well, you better be careful because the superintendent said it, so it might be true. But Fletcher's got a lot to celebrate too. Not only are we 97.6 for the district, but over the last 16 years, Fletcher's been a huge piece of growing this graduation rate. And you should be very proud that your high school has a 98.1% graduation rate. And I can tell you your principal probably knows the 2 or 3 students that didn't make it, that put him in that position, and he's probably making sure this year that when he stands up at graduation, he can talk about 100%. Here's an update on your school grades. This flipped a little as we loaded it. They weren't all nicely aligned just a moment ago, but we have a lot to celebrate overall in terms of where your schools are as well. They are all doing a fantastic job. They're all working with all very diverse populations out here at the beach, and they're all making great improvements. In your case, 100% of the schools in District 2 are A, B, and C rated. The ultimate goal would be for me to stand here and tell you that all of your schools are A and B, and that all of our schools in our district are A and B rated. So that's where we work to try to make sure that we continue to raise our own expectations for our children. Here's the handout that I gave. I saw your eyes. Your eyes are like mine. You're going, you want me to do what with this? All right. I just wanted to give you, because we talk about A, but what does that actually mean? So if you go to Abbotts Park Elementary School at the very top, there's 800 points available in the elementary school, correct? They got 569 back in 24-25, which 569 out of 800 points equates to 71%, which gave them the A. The state has a total number of points for each elementary, middle, or high. Depending on how many points they get, that creates a percentage, and then the percentage fits into a grading scale. So you have an essay due for your history teacher. He says it's worth 100 points. You get 100, you get 100%, that gets added into your grade. It's very much similar, and the chart will give you an idea of how each one of these are doing, and it's important because we're going to talk about what the state is changing based upon all of this success. Because success can't just stay in one spot. It has to continue to increase, and so do expectations. So the escalator clause, the state's escalator for school grades only goes one way. Anyone want to take a guess what direction that is? Up. Right? So that's where I go back and say, here's what happened. And this is important, and I highlighted across the state. When any one group of schools, high schools for instance, if 75% of the high schools across the entire state reach A and B status, they raise the percentage to get an A. Right? So Fletcher got an A last year. It's 64%, correct?
64.5, we should round up to 65.
Don't forget that 0.5. Right? But actually in the state grading system, they wouldn't necessarily potentially round that. If you look last year under high school, to get an A, the state said you had to get between 64% or 100% of the available points. Am I losing anybody, or are you still losing? Okay, nod your heads, let me know you're alive. That's what I used to say when I was in college. Because 75% of the schools in the entire high school state, 75% of all the high schools in the state got A's and B's. That clause went up. So come over to the 25-26 chart. In order for Fletcher to continue its A, it has to move to 65. You're like, oh, it's only 1%. Not too bad.
0.5.
I'm going to round. Another round, because that's lit state round. But keep in mind what happens after that first sentence. This is the escalator clause. 75% of the schools across the state, elementary, middle, or high, or a combination, get an A or a B, then the minimum required percentage must rise. It needs to round to the nearest 5 or to the nearest 0. So next year, if Fletcher keeps its A, and 75% of the high schools once again score A and B, that 65 is going to 70. And it will continue to increase as long as that happened. That happened in 3 areas. It happened with school districts. So if you look at the district, we got exactly 64% last year. We got the A. This year, in order to get that A, we have to get to 65, which is about 12 more points. We got 4 of them in graduating. So Corey and I are still searching 8, along with every classroom teacher, every principal, and every member of that cabinet team behind you. The other group that scored that same amount was combination schools. So if you have a K-8, which you don't necessarily have here, but we have them in the district, or a combination 6-12, those numbers shifted as well. I think it's important though for like elementary. It went from 62, and it's still 62. But if all the elementaries in the state, 75% of them in the state, get an A or a B, that is going to round up to the nearest 5, and it's going to be 65. If it happens again, it's going to move to 70. So what I provided to you in the previous chart, at the request of my board member, which you can look at your own time, because it's front and back. You have both the escalator and the grades. You can look at where the schools scored in terms of their percentage points, and then you can look at the scale score and see how if they score exactly the same, what would be their grade. Just thought that would be a fun exercise, or after you get done and get a chance to go. Operational updates. One of the things we are talking about and starting to speak more about is the 1 referendum. We get a lot of questions presented to the Beach Chamber a few months back. A lot of people wanting to know where the millage goes. 65% of it goes directly into our teachers' salaries. We have very competitive salaries statewide at the beginning level. We don't do as well as our teachers move up in years of experience, not just in Duval, but in the entire state. But we are making competitive ground related to beginning teachers. About 25.5 goes into the arts and athletics. That means your new football field that's currently underway at Fletcher High. The millage is paying for that. It's also paid potentially for some of the refurbishing of the tennis courts as well that's well underway. The other 12.5 is for other personnel. Chief Short's in the background. He's got some amazing police officers that ensure safety every single day. So not only do our teachers get an additional add to their salary, but also some of the support personnel do as well. So that's primarily where it goes. When you look at salaries alone, that is a $70 to $75 million expense that the millage pays for. Without the millage, Christopher Bernier and team and board members have to find $75 million. I am not telling you how to vote. That is not my job. I'm going to repeat that again because it's on video. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm telling you the reality of how this millage helps our teachers, helps our support staff, and allows us to do additional projects in all of our schools. So progress in pictures. The turf field is underway. Fletcher got brand new band uniforms. Mayport, these are just some of the examples. Mayport's got a brand new track. Mayport Middle also picked up a new school board. In District 2 alone, we've spent about $860,000 in the fine arts, improving theaters, stages, lighting, even cafetoriums. And we've spent about $600,000 expended in District 2 projects for a total of about $1.5 million to improve the quality. And this is before we get into half-penny sales. The half-penny sales tax will be paying for that new addition. So that's the difference. Millage works for teacher salaries, arts and athletics, and the half-penny sales tax builds a new structure. So I wanted you to be aware. There's also a handout that gives you some information about what we're spending on major master's facilities projects and what we're doing on major maintenance in our schools in District 2. That's another one of the handouts available. Half-penny sales we talked about. The ongoing project at Duncan Fletcher is scheduled to be about $61 million. The deferred maintenance projects in all of our schools is about $65 million that will be spent over the next several years in order to continue to improve the facilities that we have out at the beaches. A total of $6.2 million has been spent thus far on safety and security projects. I'm happy to report that most of the secure vestibules are about 90% complete in terms of their construction. They're about 60 to 65 complete on things like cameras, the special button, the special locks that go in them. But those will be done by the end of the year, and that's that ability, like at Seabreeze, when you open that main door, you're now not going to be able to just walk directly into the school. You're going to have a barrier that stops you, somebody that meets you there, and then buzzes you further into the school in order to make sure we continue to protect our children. This was an avenue that Ms. Carney raised with me. It's an avenue that I believe in sincerely. I think we've got to make sure that we do everything we can to make our schools as safe as possible. Budget updates. In the recent weeks, I have been attributed to have said that the district was $100 million in debt. I was here last year, I spoke to all of you. We were not $100 million in debt. If the district owed a vendor $100 million, Mr. Fagan and I would go into reserves, put together a budget resolution for the board, and we would spend from cash reserves and pay that bill. We were on a pathway to a $100 million deficit. We weren't budgeting based upon average salaries. We were spending more money than we took in. We were not, just like you, we were not being good stewards of fiscal dollars upon my arrival. We are becoming that and moving forward, and I've got some good news on where we are. But I want to clarify that aspect of, we never owed somebody $100 million. But we were headed on a path where, remember, our fund balance was just above 4. And if it went to 3, we risked state takeover. We did a good job last year. We still have a lot of work to do. We did a good job last year, and I want to make sure you get an update regarding the district's financials. One of the things we did was we took some additional money based upon our job and the good work we did, and we reduced the number of schools outside of class size. We invested about $34 million into our schools. We put it in extra teachers. Now, our principals will say to you, thank you very much, but then they'll immediately say, thanks, Dr. B, but. It's one thing to give them a position, it's another thing to find them a teacher. And that's the hard part. But you can't find a teacher, and you certainly can't hire one without a position. But last year, around this time, just prior to this time, I was asked to sign a form to send to the state saying about 70 of our school buildings were outside the constitutional amendment in the state of Florida for classes. I told my staff it would be the last time I signed that bone. This year we are down to 2. We fixed them during FTE, but then with a small scheduling area at 2 of our elementaries, 2 popped on. So we have 4, but we've since taken them and brought them back into compliance. So we've worked very, very hard to make sure our schools have enough staff to make sure we're making our schools in the classroom as small as possible for the educators who are responsible for those students. We increased the fund balance by about $42 million, so that first painful process of coming to before this community and saying we are in danger of state takeover has potentially passed. The $45 million took us from just above 4% to a 5% fund balance. That's the board policy. The board policy requires the superintendent to have a 5% fund balance. How it fell below that without the board knowing, I don't know. Mr. Fagan and I were not here. We accept responsibility for what we inherited, and we're fixing it. That $45 million, though, is not just free cash. Remember I said we invested $34 million into class size and teacher salaries. Why? We need to get aligned with the Constitution of the state of Florida, and paying teachers more is a way to keep teachers working in our classrooms. And every time we have additional dollars to spend on salaries for our educators, that's what this superintendent will do with them. Now you're saying, what about the rest? The rest is kind of contingency. Because I don't know about you, but the gas pump recently has been pretty painful. That's why school districts have contingency. Because our buses run on an amazing fuel called diesel. If you have a diesel car, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, when you look at the 429 for regular unleaded, take a look at the green numbers and think about what Mr. Colbert is facing as we transport nearly 60,000 kids a day on school buses. We're going to be fine, but that 45 million, subtract 30 to 35 million from it, then take whatever the extra $3 to $4 million we are estimating just to finish the year in diesel costs. Right? We have to be prepared. So sometimes people say, well, what are you doing with that extra money? We're keeping a 5% fund balance so I don't get in trouble with my board. But we also have to be prepared for things like rising gas prices. Some of you know I experienced Hurricane Ian down in Southwest Florida. I woke up the following morning past that storm with $350 million of damage to my buildings alone. We had a very strong fund balance. It allowed us to get started on the work right away. And then when FEMA finally got around to it, and our insurance finally got around to it, we started to get the flow of cash back. So that's why we have a fund balance. We've reduced the elementary school teacher ratio, we've added class size position, we've increased average salaries, and again, we've increased for instructional materials and salary compensation as well. The difference between average salaries, that's the money that a teacher takes home, but we've also increased the amount of money that the board invests in their benefits, so that we didn't pass those costs on to our teachers and administrators and employees this year. We held those costs by increasing them at our level so that they didn't have to pay the inflationary rate for their insurance. Okay, beaches are always worried about enrollment and capacity. I was here last year, you want to talk all about Atlantic Beach and Anchor. Here's still the trend that we're looking at. The light blue line is our actual enrollment. The dark blue line is what we have for capacity. This is how many seats we have. And you can see over the course of the last 9 years, we've seen a decrease in the number of our students, but we've not seen the same decrease in the number of capacity seats. So in other words, we have more, if we were Home Depot, we have more stores than we need. We don't have enough customers to keep all of our stores open. We are working and continuing to work with the board through the difficult decision. The board did vote this past year to consolidate Anchor Academy in Mayport. We have an update that we are still working on that federal grant. If the board helps me pass an item on Tuesday night, which I believe I have at least one vote, we are going to be augmenting our grant team to be prepared for those federal grants when they arrive, because there's going to be very tight deadlines with them. And those federal grants potentially could have us do something very different with Anchor Academy. And want to recognize a member of our team who's here. She's technically not part of our team, but she's smiling me in the back. She is just an amazing person who helps us every day as our military liaison between the base and the airport. Sharon, could you just stand up and direct? I know this whole community knows you. Okay, so that's a problem for the superintendent, but here's a new one. I'm looking around the room, looking a little more closely just to be sure. I don't think any of us are going to be contributing to this problem. This is birth rate. We get about 62% of every kindergartner that's born. So, number of births in 2010 were about 14,600 in Duval alone. You can see where that's headed. And you can see where it's headed through 21, 22, 23. What this doesn't show you is what the birth rates were in 24 and 25 and what they're projected to be in 26. That number at 23 is expected to go under 10,000. So 60% of 10,000 kids is very different than 60% of 14,600. So not only do we have more schools than we need, we know nationally, this is not a Duval problem, nationally, there's less students being born. Jacksonville Chamber just recently presented with their demographic people, the birth rate is potentially falling below 1 per family. Right now it hovers at 1.2. Young people, for whatever reason, maybe there is one person in the room that may be contributing, at some point.
We'll get busy soon.
Wasn't asking for that, but I appreciate the feedback. Just want you to be aware that, this is another part of the business model that a superintendent has to look at. Because if we get a shortage coming into kindergarten, and that's backed up by several years of low birth, now we're going to have an elementary school potentially that's even more empty, right? If we see that number recover, then we know we're coming out of this lack of a birth rate problem. But I think if you've been paying attention to the news, Orange County just closed 9. Broward's in the process of closing 10. We're down about 50,000 kindergartners across the state this year. They just aren't here. And then on top of it, what we're learning is that while we expect, in the key takeaway area, about a 4.1% increase through 33, 34, we're now dealing with a new problem, the migration problem. Not immigration, migration. As you know, especially here and across Jacksonville, there was a period of time during COVID when you drove to work or drove to the grocery store and you were following plates that said New York, California, Texas, Wyoming, and then eventually that same car had a Florida tag. That migration is slowing as well. People are not currently migrating to Florida in the same numbers they were before. So this is another area we have to take on and look at. The scale to the left is the scale that applies to the colored bar graphs. So you can see where we were with enrollment in 23-24 and how we projected going out, both for the district, our charter schools, home education. The line at the top is specific to the beaches. And you look at the scale on this side for that line, right? We're currently about 14,238 kids, but over time that number is going to drop to 14,082. That number does not yet take in that declining birth rate, nor that change in migration. And that's the word that the Chamber of Commerce uses, so that's why I use it. So we are having some of those issues as well as we move forward, which means less students, less income, right? We have about $8,000 a student to educate them. If we have less of them, you just do the simple math of multiplying how many we lost. That'll give you how much we lost. We can always multiply the total population by about $8,400, and you'll get an idea of where our enrollment is. I will share this PowerPoint with your group. It'll be published. You can print it and tear it up and call me and tell me all sorts of things. This is important because it was a specific question. These are where we're dealing with classroom vacancies, specifically out at the beaches through Abbas Park, through Sable Palm Elementary. This was verified as early as today. We have a spring hiring fair coming up on April 25. We're out at all sorts of events, including the Great Florida Teach-In in Orlando. We just recently got back from other states. We've gone to cold weather states in the cold weather to say, come to Florida, it's really warm there. And we're seeing some things, but I think the best thing we did, and I gotta thank our principals in the room for this, we're doing something and we're gonna get away with 1 year because the two other superintendents that I'm most close with have figured it out in the area, Kathy and Dr. Broski, Nassau and Clay. We moved our budgetary timelines up this year. We gave our principals their budget much earlier than usual because we wanted them to get done with budget, because once they're done with budget, then they know how many teachers they can hire. Once they know how many teachers they can hire, then we know how many vacancies we have. We're going to be out a full 3 to 4 weeks ahead of Nassau, Clay, and St. John's. And we did it very strategically. We want to be in the hiring season before those other districts are even out of their budget process. This will happen 1 year only, because they found out we did this, and they are in the midst of revising their budgetary processes to meet the expectations. But when I found out when they were ready and when we were ready, my team figured out a way to be ready faster. So we're going to have, and if anybody, teachers are more important than puppy dogs. I'm going to say that again, teachers are more than puppy dogs. But you also know that when there's a beautiful litter of great people, you want to get the pick of that litter. And we're really excited about the opportunity we have with this particular year to be ahead of the curve and to be able to get our teachers recruited and fill the vacancies that we do have. I do want to note in the line graph, back in 21-22, we were not doing as well with class size. Okay? We added all the positions we needed to meet class size this year, and while we still have, as of this date, 277 vacancies in our classroom, which is 277 more than we need. We did that by having more positions out on the books than we've ever had before. So, it's a balance. I knew this was going to happen. I knew we were going to have more vacancies, but again, you can't find a teacher unless you have a job to hire one. Last category is school safety. You are blessed to have a member of your community that also operates as our police chief. If you haven't seen the evening news today, you need to. He outlined the bus camera stop system for school safety today at a press conference. He was stellar. I was over in Ed White dedicating a traffic garden to Alicia Wheeler, who was killed last year, walking to Ed White High School. We put a traffic garden to teach the community about safe walking to and from school, and I don't even have to say, I know how impacted the beach was last year by the loss of a student as well. Mrs. Carney says this a lot. Safety and academics, same world. Like Maslow's one out. If they don't feel safe, they can't learn. And they can't learn if they don't feel safe. And the investment in Mr. Short's Chief Short's police force, the investment in our technology, making sure that we have all the right people and the right partnerships. Pleased to have great relationships with the beach police officers and their respective chiefs. It's a great opportunity to work. We tried to stay ahead of Senior Skip Day this year. One of the mayors called me and said, when's Senior Skip Day? I said, I don't know, they don't arrange that with me. But we promised we would keep an eye on social media because they tell us. They don't know they're telling us, but they tell us. And we were able to get ahead of that, and want to thank Chief Short and all the beach police chiefs for their help and safety regarding that. We have a police officer in armed guarding in every one of our public schools. We have weapon detections now, not just in our high schools, but we moved it to, we finished by the end of the year with all of our middle schools. In District 2, all middle schools and high schools have walk-through metal. They're not really metal detectors, they're weapon detection systems. And then we now have 4 canines. One detects drugs, the other weapons, and they're deployed as needed. They're, what's the phrase, Chief? Floppy-eared? They're floppy-eared dogs. They're not those ones that are going to bite you. Right? They're tell us they sit down, or they lick you. I mean, they're amazing animals that just have really great training. We're going to be expanding that program because those dogs can see and smell and find things much faster than all of us as human beings can. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure I highlighted the Be Safe, Be Seen program. We continue to work through this. Again, we had another dedication today for another traffic garden, and Jim Culbert's credit. As we build new elementary schools, a traffic garden will be a part of the building process, so that all our elementary students will learn in a safe space how to walk, how to use a crosswalk. We should do them in our high schools too, so kids can learn how to ride an e-bike. Those things are Fairly Dangerous. That's my shameless plug to say if you're a grandparent getting ready to buy an e-bike, buy them something else, please. We had an incident almost with one of my own staff members with a student leaving out of the middle school out on the beach. If both the student and the driver hadn't been more aware, it would have been a bad situation. And when my staff member got out of the car, the little sixth grader thought he was in trouble. He said, "You're not in trouble. I just want you to see seventh grade." And the little boy started to cry, and they took care of it. They got with a parent and other staff members, but those things are just, they're dangerous. And I know they're a bigger issue potentially out here than maybe in other areas of our community. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm sorry to do death by PowerPoint. I kept it under 45 minutes, which is what I was told. I answered some of your questions. I know I didn't answer them all, but Mrs. Carney and myself are available. Do you want to follow up before we open up for questions?
I just want to highlight some of the things in the presentation that have been a huge collaboration between the board, the superintendent, and the cabinet. For those of you that don't watch our meetings, I know that sometimes there are times during the day we all are at work, or you're teaching, or you're with your kids and can't pay attention. It's a team effort, what we do for our kids every single day, and when it comes to the fine balance of the budget and making sure we have highly qualified educators in the classroom and making sure that our students are getting to and from school safely, it's a heavy lift, and I'm very appreciative of this superintendent, my 6 other colleagues on the board, and this cabinet for all the work that we all put in every single day to make sure that we're providing a quality learning environment for your children.
They build excellent policy. They really do. They build all the policy that we write procedures to. Our procedures are then vetted with our principals and other leaders to make sure they're aligned to meet what the policy demands of us. And we continue to do that work. So when you talk to your board members sometimes and they say, that's really an operational issue, you really need to be in touch with the superintendent, she's really doing her job. Her job is policy. The procedures drive daily operations, and if the procedures aren't working for us, me and my staff need to know so that we can adjust our procedures or come back to the board and address the policy if the policy has to read differently. So I know that attending our board meetings or watching them on TV is probably not at the top of your list. However, when I do finally retire, I will get a small bag of popcorn, and I will sit and I will watch the new superintendent, whoever that may be, do that work. I'm not retiring anytime soon. Let me clarify that. I hope.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. So we will open it up to question and answer. I just have a couple of house cleaning things. So if you raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you so everyone can hear your question. And then if you could keep your questions pretty succinct, because we are cutting it a little close because we started a little late, but I want to try and get everybody's question in. So if you raise your hand, I'll bring the mic. 2 hands over there. Do you want to stay in the middle of the room?
Sure, be happy to.
I'll do the laundry.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have more of a statement than a question. I will be very succinct about this because I'm an alumni of April County, Clay County, and I'm also teacher first vice president.
Yes.
So I figured I'd go home and see what they're doing over there. We're doing a lot better than Clay County. And I thank you and the school board for treating our educators and education staff professionals with respect and dignity. It's been an honor to work with you. It's been negotiated across the table with each other to do what's best for our students and our community. So you're all of you to be committed. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hey, that's a wrap. We're done.
Not yet.
You got the sense of humor. That's good. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Candace Kelly, I'm Long Beach City Commissioner, and we would be very interested in getting all Atlantic Beach resident children at our school and not sharing them across the road in Neptune Beach.
Understood. You have asked for that at our last beaches meeting. My staff has been looking and preparing what we would refer to as rezoning maps. Those rezoning maps have to go through a long process because it's not just simply about moving children. We have to look at moving children, what capacities look like, what happens to the demographics, what happens to free and reduced lunch, what happens to school grade, right? So all those things we want to see before we would come out and even propose. Then again, when we propose, we've got a little bit different process that I want to roll out. I don't want to try to get things done in 3 meetings. I think it takes longer to engage the community and have a deeper conversation. So as you look at those maps and you think this line would be better here or that better there, we go back, we redraw those maps again, we create those same data charts so we understand. And some of them, like if we move kids and we push a school from 40% free and reduced lunch to 90, that's a non-starter for me. I'm not going to make that recommendation to the board. I don't think in the particular issue you're raising that will happen,
Probably not.
but we want to make sure that we're being diligent about the proposals that we bring forward so that we're, number one, able to explain them, and number two, willing to take feedback and understand what the community might like with particular neighbors or where we draw a line. We'll commit to going back and studying that and bring it back, and we'll look at what the changes look like. So yes, ma'am,
Thank you.
you were heard at the last meeting. We'll continue to take a look at that.
Hey there, Eric Bacho. So what I'm about to ask you is not representative of the United States Navy or the Department of Defense. I said it. So I'm a newly arrived resident of the area, and my question comes from a very genuine and sincere question about retention. I did see that, and please forgive me, I just got here just recently in terms of, I'm going to miss this, but retaining good teachers and the question about that. So I'm coming from the Maryland area, the DC area specifically, and I have a number of colleagues who are very experienced in that realm. The problem is they're active duty spouses, in so many cases it's hard for them to establish sort of residency and sort of seniority within an area. Have you been looking into or working closely with the newly arrived or the readily established military population, especially those family members who have experience in this area? I did see that you have a very robust recruitment effort, but I am curious about what you're doing about retaining good teachers, senior wisdom teachers, and are you looking at the resources that the military and the recently retired military brings to the table with regards to that particular population and skill set?
Yes, sir. It's a great question, and thank you for it. I think it's important for us to understand that we have, in all cases, male, female service personnel many times come with what is sometimes referred to as a trailing spouse. I have a trailing spouse. Right? She found a job over in Clay County as an NFLAC with the U.S. military to help the military's children at a particular elementary school not just deal with the trials and tribulations, and we should recognize that April is the month of the military child, and purple is the color to be wearing on the 14th and 15th of April. But to do the work and help support those students, not just day to day, but also when parents deploy or redeploy. Recently, I was out on one of the wharfs taping with Skipper at Mayport for a month of the military child, and myself and my chief of staff had an opportunity to see the Donald Cook.
Yes.
The Donald Cook push off, take the harbor masters, turn them around, and head them towards the inlet. Those people had just been back for a short period of time. Skipper wouldn't tell me exactly how long, probably for the same reason why you said this is not an official position of the U.S. Navy. We continue to work with those families. Our team is deeply invested. It's happening more, and I think it's because of the type of personnel, it's happening more at NAS JAX, because that's where our families go. There's some particular centers there where as spouses come in and they relocate, as they look for positions and other things, and our HR teams in the back, they've been working there, and we will continue to work at Mayport as requested. I think the biggest thing is we need to know if somebody wants to be a teacher to do that. One of the things I didn't ask, and I won't ask you to do it now, if you're a retired educator, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you'd like to come back. We have lots of opportunity. I have 277 vacancies, and I know I have one with your name on it. And that's really what it's going to take. But thank you for that, because it is a recruitment strategy that we just brought up recently. There is movement of personnel, and whether that person is going to stay 2 years, 4 years, or they're going to finish out their last station duty here and then retire, if they've got a teaching license or they want to be in here, we'll make sure we have room for them. What we're doing with recruitment comes down to some of the millage work. We are not only increasing teacher salary, the governor has put a lot of money into beginning teacher salary. One of the things we've been good to work with DTU, and I think he left, is we're trying to work to try to pull out what we call compression. As the beginning teacher salary has risen, the compression for an experienced educator, they're not getting the same space from that beginning teacher. So So the beginning teacher's getting more and more money, and experienced teacher is seeing them catch them. So as we put more money in, we're having conversations with the DTU to try to pull that apart. Additionally, the millage pays between a $5,000 to $8,000 supplement to a teacher's salary based upon years of experience and longevity. So that's another way that we're moving money into teachers' pockets.
Can I just, because a lot of the people that approach me are military who are retiring and they want a second career. So are you accessing these very motivated 40-somethings, 50-somethings who want to give back to their country again, but in a different way?
100% we are.
They really just want to.
100% we are. We were just recently in a military job fair over at the Schultz Center, and we will continue to recruit anybody who wants to come out of the military and join us. In fact, we have a pathway for them, even if they don't have certifications, to get those certifications. So that, and the governor's been huge in help clearing the path to give those individuals more time to get their certification, because they're working adults. They're not going to have time to squeeze 4 years of college into a 2-year certification.
Dr. Bernier, I just want to piggyback. I'm so sorry. At every NDOC and when I brief, I'm always telling everyone about the pathway I work with their HR department to make sure that they know that there is an easy path for a military to go.
And if Jackie and Alex could just wave their hands, they're on the back row. Jackie is our CHRO. Alex is her number 2 in the recruitment and staffing positions. If you know of anybody or you'd like to get their contact information, they're more than happy to give it and make sure that you have the pathway.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Farrell, and I have 2 kids at Fletcher High School, and I just had some concerns about and questions about the proposed change to having 7 periods in a single day instead of block scheduling. And with the ACE program in particular, both of my kids are in the ACE program, block scheduling has been the educational model that the district has chosen because it thinks that it is the most beneficial educational model for students. And that's especially the case in acceleration programs, AP, IB, and ACE in particular. ACE is, as you know, very writing heavy. And so it's a lot of analysis, but then articulating that. And the ACE exams, both in class and then the end of the year exams, are all essay. And the ACE exams, which they prepare for all year, are like an hour and a half or more essay tests. And one of the things that Fletcher does, and I'm sure the other schools that have those programs, is in class they have practice, test prep where they do practice essays in real test conditions. And it's been very successful. I think they have a near 100% ACE graduation rate, and the kids do very, very well on the exams. So this change to having 7 classes in a single day will be pretty devastating for the ACE program, from what I've heard from some of the teachers, and definitely what the ACE students think. There's like a ton of time lost in setting up and breaking down. I know you know that, but they're talking about 50-minute periods. So I guess I would like to know how you anticipate being able to deal with that, and then also why it's only impacting neighborhood schools and not magnet schools. This is another thing that is, where magnet schools are getting an exception. We lost a class period, and so now a lot of the ACE kids are taking all academic classes every single class period. So if they have 7 periods a day, that's a ton of homework in every single class. And if they're all academic classes, that can be a really overwhelming course load, where the block scheduling gives a little buffer. The magnet schools will still have that. And I guess my question is, number 1.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah. So why are we changing to this 7 periods a day? Why not the magnet schools? And then also, if it's a done deal, will there be training available to the teachers so that they learn how to effectively manage 7 periods in a day?
Yes, we will. So the answer to the last question is yes. We'll provide additional support to our principals, to our PLCs and other things to make sure teachers can operate within that schedule. Let me back all the way back to the beginning. When I first got here, the whole district was on an 8-period day, both at middle schools and at high schools. We don't generate enough FTE dollars to afford the staff to support an 8-period day. The only other school in the state that I'm currently aware of is Nice High School in St. John's, that's on an 8-period day. In my former life as a middle and high school principal, in 2004, my district that I was employed at the time moved away from the 8-period day because we knew we could not afford it. It's one of the reasons why we were headed on a path to a $100 million deficit. That's one reason, but that's not the only. Additionally, when you have an 8-period day, you offer over the course of 4 years 32 credits. That works great for your child, no question about it, because he'll fill most of those, right? But with a 7-period day, you get 28. You're only required to have 24. And you're sitting next to one of the scheduling gurus who's been my right hand in this. And I don't know these, we've always agreed on it, but he's been amazing. He's been an amazing ally and support. That 7-period day with 28 credits, most kids fill out a full schedule in their senior year. In our traditional schools, our neighborhood schools as you refer to them, with an 8-period day, on average, in a school the size of Fletcher, these are not Fletcher numbers, in a school the size of Fletcher, Atlantic Coast, Mandarin High School, I had between 400 and 600 students who were half scheduled their senior year. Meaning I had to apply and buy, purchase, pay a full-time teacher to teach children that were only going to be on school every other day. We can't afford that. The other piece to it is sometimes people, this is going to be a long answer because it's a long question. The other piece to this is at the magnet schools, those 32 credits that they're available, those are filled the senior year. They maximize the credit hours. They are not, I'm not paying for half-time students and a full-time teacher. Additionally, so the parents who are like, anybody worried about college, just hang with me here. The first thing you do when you're thinking about college for a student, well, the first thing I think you need to hear is that a student can still complete an IB, ACE, capstone project on a 7-period day. As a high school principal for a long period of time, my kids made it. Clay, St. John's, Nassau, all on 7-period days. Baker, Orange, Volusia, Broward, Palm Beach, Miami, all on 7-period days. Well, Broward may be making a shift based upon board. But there's a reason why the other districts moved away from this in the early 2000s, because they knew they couldn't afford it. We just continued to do it and continued to pay the bill, and while we were increasing in enrollment, you can get away with that, because you get more kids every year. But when enrollment levels out and then starts to drop, you have to look. So for parents and grandparents who are in future parents who are thinking about children and college, here's how college admission works. The first thing you have to understand is I know we're very proud when a salutatorian stands up, and I don't know how they get a 6.5 GPA. I wouldn't know. I didn't get on the dean's list until I was in college. But when the college admissions counselor looks at your student, the first thing they do is they strip the weights. So an A in a class is an A in a class, it's worth 4 points. If you take 28 credits and you get A's in all your classes, you have a 4.0 average. If you take 32 classes and you divide those classes by 32 and they're all A's, you have a 4.0. Kids are equal. The next thing they look at, no matter what they tell you, is ACT and SAT. That's the next grade line. Only then do they look at academic rigor. And here's the important calculation. I'm putting you on the spot. Can I say 10? How many AP, IB, ACE classes do you have in your master schedule? 20?
I would say 12.
12.
Yes, sir.
So if I go to Fletcher and I take all 12 of those classes, I get weighted as taking 100% of them. In order to get that same weight at some of the magnet schools, I must take all of theirs and their significant additional number. So they're not just 12, there may be 26. If I take 12 out of the 12, I've taken everything that Fletcher has to offer. If I take 10 out of 22, let me make it 11, it's easier for me to do the math. I only get 50% of the weight for that work. So the admissions counselors don't penalize a student for what the school offers, right? They level that playing field by saying how many courses does a school offer and how many did you take. So a lot of my emails have been around, well, my child's not going to have a chance to compete against a Wolfen, Paxton, Stanton, Douglas Anderson. They can't. First thing is an A, and they're going to strip all the weights away. They're just going to do them on GPA. They're just going to do them on straight GPA. Their SAT and ACT score is going to count even more than their academic weight. And when they are judged on academic weight, they're judged based upon the number of advanced courses at that school, not what's offered across the district or across the state or from somebody in Iowa, right? So if they're looking at the University of Florida, do that. I will share one more thing and then I'm done with a very long answer to a very long question. The only true college credit comes from a college. FSCJ, UNF. When your child joins a science and engineering program at one of the big universities in Florida, if they need chemistry and physics, and they've passed chemistry and physics AP with a 5 on the test, they're going to get an elective clept. They're not going to have to take painting or religion, because that university is going to make that engineering major go back through their physics and their chemistry class. So the other piece that we're looking at with the 7-period day and why we're not staying with the hybrids, I'll come to that in a minute. One is to make sure that we still can do early college. A lot of times when a student gets to their senior year and they're 24 or 26 credits, they have the opportunity to take 2 with us, but then we enroll them in early college and we continue to get paid. That's a full schedule. And I'll do the last one because the union left. I would have started with this if the union was still here, but our teachers are still here. The current schedule doesn't give a teacher a planning period every day. And I have heard ad nauseum, and rightfully so, because when we started this process, I was very adamant, 7-period day, planning period every day. Been an educator. They got to take a break. They got to make a phone call to get a doctor's appointment. They have to go to the restroom. They have to breathe. And some of the schedules that our high schools, with our permission and working with them, that they went to and with the union support, left teachers without a planning period. And that's just not a work environment that I would want to work in. So I know I'm happy to stay later, we can talk more. But that was a very long answer to a very long question. Thank you for the team for hanging in there with me.
Okay, how many more questions do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, so it's up to you.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I thought we ended at 8:30, so I'll throw that out.
Okay, all right. But short questions, please, okay? Thank you.
So, Joy Guzman, and I'm deeply concerned about the dismantling of our public school system. I'm a taxpayer. My kids graduated in 2008 from Duval County, one with her IB diploma from Paxton and one with a special certificate from Malden Road. That's my world. And this may not be local and I may not be most up to date, but the schools of hope, for the life of me, I have no problem with them using our buildings. Why don't they have to pay rent? I don't get it.
You want to throw up a coin? I'll start by saying, because that's what the law said at the time. There's been some rulemaking that I think Mrs. Carney would like, as she came to.
The state.
Thanks, Dr. Greer. So, our commissioner in Tallahassee and myself and Chair Joyce had the opportunity to do a weekend working session and tear apart the Schools of Hope legislation and take a look at the rule prior to the rulemaking session that the Board of Ed recently voted on. I feel very fortunate that he came to Duval County to talk to us about this because it was a hot button issue for all of us, right? Like, when I was looking at the legislation, I was like, first of all, how did this sneak by and nobody noticed, right? And we had just passed in the state of Florida a squatter's law, right? Where if somebody comes and squats in your rental home and they're not paying rent, then they can be arrested and thrown out of your house. I was looking at Schools of Hope the same way. And so when we sat down, this was a weekend Teams call with the Commissioner of Education and his staff, we tore it apart. And basically, not every part of the rule, we didn't get all of the things that we wanted, but But actually there's a couple things, there's two things. One thing is the district has to come to the School of Hope and show them what their operating expenses are. And then the School of Hope has to come and show what their operating expenses are going to be. And whatever that delta is, the School of Hope is now going to have to make up that delta. So they're not going to be freeloading anymore. Okay, so that's passed. The other thing is that the original rules showed that if a school was at 90% capacity, which is the majority of our D2 schools here, that a School of Hope could put in a letter of intent and potentially come in and take up that other 10% of space, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. So that now has been dropped down to 75%. So there has to be 25% of the seats open. That being said, we can go back as a district and say, well, this isn't going to work because, for instance, this is an arts magnet. Fort Caroline Middle got a letter. They're an arts magnet. We responded to them and said, no, we need these additional spaces because we have a magnet program, we have music instruments, we have arts programs going on that need this additional space, so we don't have that room for you. In addition to that, I know we're supposed to be doing short answers, so I'm going to just one more thing. This is important. The new rule now states that in the entire state of Florida, only 5 schools of hope per year can be allowed to enter a traditional public school building. We received 26 letters.
We did. That was a strategy.
Right. But now only 5 in the entire state can send us letters of intent to come in. With what this board is doing and working in conjunction with operations and the superintendent to consolidate schools and to make sure that we're running as an efficient district and utilizing all of our seats, I don't have any concerns going forward about us being taken over by schools.
We had a number of applications, and I can talk offline about the strategy that was applied by one of the charter school operators. Ultimately, we came down to 2. One was impractical because Don Brewer and Don Merrill were combining, so there wasn't programmatic space. And Fort Caroline came off the list because it's not actually in an opportunity zone, and that's one of the requirements. You just can't go into any school, you have to go to one within an opportunity zone. In the meantime, we just finished a meeting with the Department of Education yesterday. They just finished a site visit. They have given us really interesting processes and means to change the capacity of our school buildings, to reduce them so that the enrollment numbers and the usage looks better. All totally legal, all totally above board, has to do with the FISH report, the Florida inventory of schoolhouses and how we report. We've also received information recently that if we had a space and it was going to be amenable to us to bring in a pre-K program, a local provider who didn't want to pay rent for their storefront anymore, and we thought they were delivering really good quality pre-K, we could bring them in, they could rent our facility, and then that would count as use of programmatic space. That's an interesting recruitment process for me, because a pre-K student whose family loves the elementary school they're in is likely to choose to stay for kindergarten. So it's forced us to think differently, if you want because there is no really golden cloud with this, but it made my team, I think, differently about empty space in our schools. How do we make sure that that space is truly accurate, and then how do we utilize it for the betterment of our schools?
Thank you. Do you have a question?
April Carney.
We're good.
But, so we have 277 teacher vacancies right now. Do you know what the current SLP vacancy rate is?
I knew that question was going to come, but I couldn't get past the camera back to my 2 HR people. They will have the answer before the end of the evening.
So as of last month, we were over 10%.
Yes.
We're at 10.25. What actions are we taking to... I am so sorry. What actions are we taking? You're going to the early drop period for the teachers. What are we doing to bring in those SLPs? Because right now, we have how many,
Our SLP jobs are out online. They're out in my LinkedIn account. They are out in national organizations. They are out in professional journals that you read. And Duval is actively seeking those individuals. One of the problems, let's be honest with each other in front of the community, people with your credentials need to be paid differently. And that is a union issue. And I'm hoping that you will what you've been doing, is advocating for them, not just with me, but with our union, to get them to understand, if we offer a 4% raise and the governor has given all this money to new teachers, that doesn't mean we need to give a brand new teacher 4%. That brand new teacher might get an additional 1%. Every 1% that we save can move up the ladder and into specified responsibilities with people with greater credentials to try to separate their salaries. I do believe that while people will not stay for money, they'll come for money. And if we have a competitive wage, we'll be able to continue.
Because right now it's you need more than 17 years for a speech pathologist not to get first-year salary. I would love to at some point, if you would ever be willing to meet with some SLPs for things, because it's hard to do that, but we're trying.
Well, when we had one of the first meetings, I sat down with all of you and we talked about a strategy with the union. I have to be careful because this is being publicly recorded. I never want to be accused of bargaining in public, because that's a bad thing. But we're not currently in a bargaining state with our union, so I feel like I can speak more openly and honestly. And if Tammy Brooks Evans was in the room, I'd give you the same answer.
Good evening, Dr. Nancy Sons, Dr. Bernier, and April. Thanks for coming here. I feel like we're listening to you trying to cover so many jobs, so many things with such a limited budget, and it's painful. It's painful to watch, to be honest. But I also think it's painful that we're not acknowledging why our schools are suffering so much financially. Since 2021, when we started the vouchers, we have issued so much money, and 85% of them went to children who were already in private schools. We've also increased on your chart, you showed we're up to 18%, and that was 4 years ago. It's way higher now of our students going to charter schools. So it's a little disingenuous. We're losing a lot of students, but we're mostly losing money due to the state's policy. And I'd like to ask, you had 7 priorities, correct, for the school board to go to the legislature. Number 1 was to get your own attorney, which you succeeded in doing that. Aside from the tweaks to the Schools of Hope, was there any other gain through this legislative session that would help our children or our finances specifically? Thank you.
So what I can tell you is that when we went to Tallahassee, Dr. Bernier was in a lot of meetings with us with the state legislature. None of us brought up Virginia. We were all, my big thing was the Fusion Center. I wanted Jim Colbert to get this Fusion Center, which is the ability to allow all of our police agencies and the schools to all collaboratively talk at the same time for school safety. At the end of the day, all 7 of us were there. Dr. Bernier was there. Our governmental affairs people were there. We got there first thing in the morning. We were there until the sun almost went down twice. That's in addition to making multiple phone calls about our platform. I wish I had a magic bullet and could get the legislature to vote all of our things that we want in, but unfortunately, that's just not the way the cookie crumbled. But I think Dr. Bernier can tell you,
there have been some small wins around teacher
Small
certification.
things, yeah.
There have been some other small wins related to human resources processes and recruitment and retention of teachers. There's been some additional work done on DROP. If you're new to the state of Florida, the deferred retirement option, which allows both teachers and administrators to extend, because we don't want to lose really good quality experienced educators. But I think it's really important to say the legislature isn't done yet. We don't have a budget yet. The governor's put out a budget. The Senate's put out a version. Ron, have we seen the House too? We have. The superintendent hasn't yet. Ron will show it to me tonight. But that they'll go into caucus when they get back after Easter, right? And I sometimes refer to that as horse trading. They always remind me that's caucusing. And that's where they'll trade back and forth. The Senate's budget is closer to where the governor's is. The governor's was pretty supportive of public ed. The House is a little different. And it's always that way. And what they'll do is they'll go into their final session and they'll go back and forth. And we're hopeful that we'll continue to see an increase in the base student allocation, which we saw last year. We're hoping they'll take a look to the sorry, I forgot your name, but they were hoping they're going to take a look at how they finance and how they change the financing around advanced studies and advanced programs, because they moved that from an FTE category to a categorical, and we have some questions about whether we're getting enough money to support our children. So, and we're having those conversations. Here's what I'll tell you about the way this board does its work and what your superintendent does. Having a public fight with a state legislator is a no-win. The discussion has to occur in Tallahassee when they're in town, over coffee, in their offices, with a closed door, and I can tell you those conversations are going on. But for me to go and hold a press conference and call out a delegation is a disaster. It's a disaster mostly for our children, because there can be, I don't think our delegation is put together this way, but there can be repercussions if you don't lobby and you don't work the correct way. And I'm really proud of what this board does. They have differing opinions. They can sit in the same room and discuss things with each other and with the state legislature, and they stick to their policies and their provisions. We're still hoping, for instance, one of the things that will come out of this budget season potentially is the beginning of the Maritime Academy. Tomorrow afternoon I'll be out at Crowley. We're building a maritime CTE program, a career technical education program. So not just merchant marine and a sailor, but the crane operator. And if you know Crowley, right, there's finance, there's budget, there's human resources. And it's a whole industry that our children can break into. And what they know right now is there's some cool cranes and some cool ships. Right? What they don't know is that there's all these jobs that lie behind that work that can be very high paying for all of them.
If I could just add one more thing. There were a couple of things like Schools of Hope that were on our platform, and specifically having an appeal process for the FISH report, the Florida Index of School, Indoor School Houses. A lot of those items, the legislature wanted to pass right back over to DOE. So there are some things that they wanted to see happen more on the rulemaking process with the Department of Ed, and those two things specifically that were on our legislative platform, that was where the legislature and the Department of Ed pretty much decided that they wanted it to be at the Department of Ed level.
Number one rule for superintendents, never surprise a board member, but I have a surprise for her because it's a good one. We had a conversation with the Department of Education the other day in our conference room before they looked at some more schools today, is there is now an appeal process for the Gestalt, and that's why they were here working on FISH, is because that message got out of the legislature over to the Department of Ed, and the Department of Ed was instructed if districts call and ask for support around Schools from Hope and making sure that we have an accurate level of utilization in our buildings to help support them. They came down right away, and they'll come back when we ask them. But they left us with the tools.
Okay, we have time for one more short question, because the answers are short.
I promise it's short.
Okay. Because their answers are not that short.
Sorry.
Hopefully this one will be quick.
So of the 277 vacancies, I was wondering if you knew what percentage of that was specifically ESE and what you were doing to fill those. I know at least one of them is, because the one vacancy at my school is a CSO self-contained position, especially knowing that the district is adding self-contained positions and we already have vacancies there.
And we're growing. So the two largest growing areas in our school district right now in terms of student population is ELL, English language learners. They come in speaking a different foreign language and they have to learn English. And the other second highest growing percentage is in ESE.
Now, how much of that ESE population growing is compared to the charter schools not accepting those students? Because I know personally, my class right now is 25% students who were asked to leave their charter schools and move to a self-contained program.
We are working with our charter school partners to make sure they understand that they have that same responsibility. Again, the law in this particular case is silent on some of those issues, but back to your recruitment strategy, same things. But let me be really clear, and I thank you for your post-career and all the retirees who didn't realize they were volunteering to take a job. But the largest college in our state, the University of Central Florida, just turned over its education building to its science and math department. Our children aren't joining this profession. And part of the reason why is we tend, and I'm talking to my educators, we tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. When I go into a third grade classroom and I ask kids what they want to be, invariably I get 5 or 6 hands that say they want to be Miss Jones or Mr. Carey, they want to be a teacher. And probably right after I leave, somebody says to them, "You don't want to do that." I have a son who's an actor, but he's an educator when he is not acting. I don't know how, I know what Ryan's going to wind up being. He's going to wind up a drama program in a major high school. That's what he's going to wind up doing. I know that. I don't know how many times as a parent I bit my lip to say, don't go into teaching. We've got to build our own pipeline. So in working with the team that I introduced before, looking at our magnet programs, we've got to start building. I was down a path with Mose over at UNF to try to find a pathway for our kids that if they went to UNF and graduated, there was tuition reimbursement or tuition waivers if they graduated and they worked for us for a period of time. We've built a paraprofessional pipeline to bring teachers in, and we're courting specifically ESE paraprofessionals because they're already committed to the work. Another area. But I'm telling you, I could bring up Maria Vasquez, I could bring up Carmen Balbagoen, I could bring up Kathy from Nassau, I could bring up some of my other colleagues in South Florida. We don't have teachers because people aren't choosing to do the job. And one of the reasons they're choosing not to do it is they look at what other careers make and they do some simple math. Now, I did hear something recently that I thought was interesting. With the current use of artificial intelligence potentially eliminating jobs, one of the most steady processes, future thinking, that will provide gainful employment will be public and private education. Because we're not going to replace teachers with a computer that talks to them. That's just not going to happen. So that may be a good thing coming down the road, but it may be something that our students look towards and they can future plan. I'm not saying we're not trying, we are. We try every day. The reason why Alex and Jackie look tired is because they are tired. They're out there all the time pushing, turning over rocks, and I don't ever talk to anybody without saying, what did you do in the past? I was a teacher. Want to come back? You know what I get as an answer? 99% of the time, no. Right? Did my time. Then I was a teacher for 40 years. I was a teacher for 35 years. I met somebody the other day who taught for 48 years. I understand, they deserve their time. But we've got to find a way to instill in our young people that this is a great profession. It really is. And if you believe in it, but it's a lot like a calling. I used to describe it, teachers who hire on usually describe their journey to the teacher position one way or the other if they're successful. They always knew they were going to be a teacher, like from the time that they were little, and they worked their tail off to become a teacher. Or they've always had a voice telling them to be a teacher, and they ignored it for a long time. And they went off and did a bunch of other things, and they said, you know, I'm not really happy doing this. I'd like to come back. I'd like to listen to that inner voice. Priesthood, nuns, it's that type of commitment work. It really is. Because what we're paying is not enough for the work that they're responsible for and doing. And we need to continue to think about how we continue to elevate the position with respect. I think COVID taught us a lot. That short period of time where we had them all by ourselves and we didn't know what to do with them all day, right? We had a great respect for our teachers and what they do every single day. We lost a little bit of that as COVID ended and we moved into the regular schedule, because we forgot what it's like to have a 14-year-old them all day and get math, science, social studies, and language arts taught. Thank you very much for inviting us. Thanks for being here tonight. Would you connect with Michael related to that chance to talk?
And also remember the handouts in the back room, the back of the table, in the back room. And one more request for those who are physically able, if you could help us stack the chairs against the wall, we'll get out of the locker. Thank you.